Hi everyone, Kelly Bear here. Welcome back to my channel if you've been here before, and if you're new here then also welcome. I'm here today for a tag, the first tag I've done since May. I think the last tag I did was the Tarot Nerd, Tarot Geek tag by Mags Black, which I enjoyed doing. This one is a relatively new one. And it's by Mnomquah, and she's created the Trad Witch tag, but it is open to all witchy magical types, so you don't have to be a traditional witch, which is what she says in her video. It's open to everyone, and there are 10 questions, and I thought this was such a really insightful, thoughtful, well thought out tag with some interesting questions. And I wanted to do it partly because I just want to get back into doing tags, because I do miss it, because it's fun, right? It's a really great way also to connect with like-minded folk around the same topics, but also I'm in this weird, I'm in this sort of weird phase where I've had a bit of a certain kind of practice for a while that was a new kind of thing to me a few years ago, and now I'm starting to evolve a little bit, or I'm looking to evolve that a little bit. So I wanted to do this now and maybe revisit it in a year or two down the line, if possible. So I'm going to jump in. If I'm looking down, it's because I have got the questions on my phone, so that I don't have to double screen it. Very important sip of tea. I've also got some homemade chocolates next to me, but I'm probably going to resist eating those whilst I film, because it's going to be a bit messy to eat them. So I will spare you that much. So I'm just going to jump straight in. So the first question is, what kind of craft do you practice? I.e. folk magic, traditional witchcraft, wicca, modern witchcraft, ceremonial magic, eclectic, occultism, etc. I would practice, I guess, what Aidan Wachter would call sorcery, or dirt sorcery, and it has a bit of a folkishness about it, I guess. It's a very sort of stripped back, bare bones kind of practice, and you can make it as elaborate as you want, but the basic underlying structure is quite simple. I find it quite elegant. I find it fun, which I think is also a really important thing. If you are practicing magic, you should also be enjoying it, right? Otherwise, why are you doing it if you're not enjoying it? So yeah, I would say I practice a sort of eclectic makes it sound like I pull from loads of different traditions, so I guess that's no longer relevant to me. Maybe it was once upon a time a little bit back in the day, but yeah, a folkish dirt sorcery, dirt magic. And I guess it gets a little chaosy, because there's a bit of pop culture paganism coming in there. There's a bit of pop culture magic. It's there's like toys and archetypes like Buffy the Vampire Slayer and Lumpy Space Princess and stuff like that. So I guess I get a little, that can be a bit chaotic, right? Or some people might class that as modern witchcraft, I don't know. So that's the first one. The second question is, what paradigm, faith or philosophy informs your craft? I.e. the spirit model, animism, neoplatonism, psychological approach, energy model, polytheism, etc. Again, this is quite interesting for me, because it's changed over the years, as I think many of us do grow and change and evolve over time. But I'm currently in this phase of figuring stuff out and where I sit within that. So I don't have a hard answer for this. I don't have a firm answer for this. And I would say it sits somewhere. Originally, I was sort of finding myself being drawn to, I say originally in the last few years, I would say I was finding myself being more and more drawn to pantheism, and the idea that everything is God in a way, but I don't really use the term God or use deity in my practice, and I started to be more drawn towards animism. And Aidan Wachter's work is one of those things that helped with that. The work of Sarah Ann Lawless, and a few other people as well. I started reading and felt that my pretty like hardcore atheism started to sort of fracture and crumble. I used to very much be very sort of psychological model for a while. But yeah, I would say it's more spirit-based, land-based, very local, and animistic in that sense. But I'm still finding my feet within that, and I still have moments where I'm like, no, I don't believe in it. It doesn't. And another time, like I'm doubting it, and then other times where I'm like, this is so definitely a thing. Especially with experiences that I have at my local park when I am out walking amongst the plants and the trees, and I'm foraging and I'm speaking to the plants and stuff like that. So yeah, so that's kind of where I sit at the moment. It's a little sort of shifting, coalescing kind of thing at the moment for me. So this is why I wanted to do this tag. So should I have firm answers? I don't know. Number 3 is, what culture or cultures is your practice rooted in? The way that my practice has been stripped down and built back up, it had no framework. It wasn't. I feel like the work that, because I'm talking about Aidan Wachter a lot because this was the pivotal moment for me, and I'll speak about the books later. But then you could tell that Aidan, having listened to a lot of podcasts, read a lot of his writings, read his books, heard him speak a lot. You can tell he's had experience. He's had experience in a lot of different paradigms and a lot of different models and a lot of different types of magic. And so he's like distilled it all. But I think without trying to put it within any particular kind of model. So it's sort of trying to make it unappropriative and just making it universal in that sense that, most systems will have spirit work, most systems of magic will have energy work, some, visualization, things like that. I sort of really distilled it, and types of magic that are very folkish, candle magic, petitions, sigils, and tying that in with a little bit of chaos magic and a little bit of ceremonial magic, a little bit of grimoire magic, that kind of thing. So yeah, I would say the stuff that I'm mostly drawn to when it comes to spiritualities and cultures, it's very much my own heritage, which is mostly Irish, Scottish, and a bit of English from what I know. And that's what I've always been drawn to, so that's cool. But my practice doesn't necessarily reflect that, and this is gonna I'm going to be touching on this in some later questions, so I'm going to put a pin in that. 4, how long have you been practicing and how did it all start? Okay, I mean, the short answer is I've been practicing on and off for, I'm trying to do the maths, 26 years, and it started way before I was 15 or 16, because I had always been drawn to magic and mystery, and I know, loads of kids are, right? We love make-believe as kids, we love fairies and fairy tales, loads of us are those kind of kids that go out in the garden and gather things to make potions in like disused plant pots and that kind of thing. I was definitely that kind of kid. I was very much kept myself to myself a lot of the time and was happy to play alone, and was often pretending that I was a witch or a fairy or some kind of magical thing. Again, I don't think I'm alone in this. I think many children do this. I think this is quite normal. But also the being a child of the 80s, I am literally classed as a geriatric millennial. I am the oldest millennial you can get. I was born in January 1981, which is the very beginning of the millennial. It's just a random arbitrary thing, but millennial has become sort of a ubiquitous term that everyone uses. But the media that I grew up around, the films, the TV shows, the books, were very darkly inclined, and you don't get the same kind of vibe with stuff nowadays for children. So I was watching stuff that was made in the 70s and through the 80s, things like The Last Unicorn, the Never-Ending Story films, God, Jim Henson, the biggest influence on me, probably The Dark Crystal, and then later Labyrinth, which came out later. What else? Watching films that aren't necessarily for children, but children of the 80s and 90s used to watch, like Ghostbusters, Goonies, Krull, Legend, Willow. I mean, it's so much spooky, ooky, good stuff that I think it was, you know, I saw Beetlejuice not long after it came out on video, probably in about 89, 90, when you had to wait ages for VHS. It took ages. It's not like now, where 3 months down the line and you can just stream something. It just was not like that back then. So yeah, I saw a lot of stuff that I probably wasn't made as for children, but also stuff that was made for children that was quite dark. So I was already predispositioned. And then things like The Crow came out. I was about 13 or 14 when The Crow came out. Then we had The Craft, which was 95, I want to say. So I was 14. It's percolating. This whole witch thing started coming out. We had Sabrina the Teenage Witch. We had Practical Magic. All this stuff coming. It was a real like witchy zeitgeist. Wicca was really gaining in popularity. And yeah, it all came to a head when a friend of mine took me to a shop called Mysteries on Great Monmouth Street, just up from Seven Dials in central London. And it's no longer, I don't even know if it longer exists. It had moved from its original site to another one just around the corner in Covent Garden, and then I don't know what's happened since the pandemic. But it was there for a really, really long time, and I did use that shop for a really, really long time. And my friend took me in there, and I was blown away. There were books about magic, there were tarot decks, there were crystals, there was incense, there was plinky plonky music, there was just, I had never seen anything like it in my life, and I was just like, oh, this is my place. And yeah, I picked up some books, I picked up a tarot deck, and the rest is history. But I also want to say, I didn't consciously and consistently practice for that entire time. There were periods of weeks, months, even years where I did not practice. I went through a very hardcore arsehole atheist phase. I'm not saying all atheists are arseholes. I'm saying I went through a phase where I was one of those arsehole atheists, those like self-righteous fucking twat atheists that just needed to pipe the fuck down for 5 minutes and just check themselves. And so I didn't practice any magic for that. In fact, I got rid of so many books and so many things that I regret getting rid of. But there was one box of stuff that I hung on to the whole time and never got rid of. And I'm glad I didn't get rid of it, because I took it out of the box years later, and some of that stuff is still on my altar to this day. So there was still a part of me that wanted to hold on to the magic. But yeah, so I hadn't consistently practiced. And again, this is another thing I'm going to touch at a later question in this tag. Wow, that was a really rambly one, but yeah, I just get excited talking about all the like cool stuff that I got to watch as a kid and that I still watch now. Like, I was super pleased when they did the new series, the spin-off prequel to The Dark Crystal. But they only did one series because it didn't perform very well, and it's very, very expensive to make. So that's sad, but I enjoyed what they did make. Anyway, let's get on to the next question. I can feel like my mouth getting dry, so I'm just gonna... Also, I don't want my tea to go cold, but this is quite a big, thick mug, so I'm hoping it will retain its heat for a while. Right, 5. What books or resources have you first started with? Would you recommend them to others today? I still have some of the books that I started with. It was like when I was getting rid of a lot of stuff back in the day, through my late 20s and very, very early 30s, I couldn't bring myself to get rid of certain things, and that included some of the first books that I bought. The first 2 books that I do remember buying were Teen Witch by Silver Ravenwolf. Yep, Mama Silver. I'm one of those baby fluffy bunnies from way back when in the 90s, and the other one was a guide for Wicca for the Solitary Practitioner by Scott Cunningham. Good old Scott Cunningham. Now, I have since gotten rid of both of those books. I really regret getting rid of my Teen Witch, because it was the one with the OG cover with the like 90s teens on the front, all looking very like walking in sort of a craft way towards the front of the book. I don't know, like they're walking towards the camera. And I sold it on eBay a few years ago, and now I regret it because it's really hard to get a hold of that original copy. It's quite expensive, and I'm like, don't. But I just thought I'd never read it again, but that didn't matter. It was like keeping it for posterity would have been nice. I do have the other books that I then went on to, and I'm looking down because I can actually see them on my shelf, which were To Ride a Silver To Ride a Silver Broomstick, to what was it? Hang on. To Stir a Magic Cauldron, and To Light a Sacred Flame. I'm just looking at them off my thing. So those are the three then that I got, and I bought like all of Mama Silver's books. I got all her little like Guide to Protection Magic, Guide to Health Magic, Guide to Prosperity Magic, all those little books. I got her Halloween one. I got her Teen Witch kit. I was like full in. I would save my pocket money and I would go buy, go to Mysteries and buy stuff. And yeah, and then Scott Cunningham, Guide for the Wicca for the Solitary Practitioner, Incense, Oils and Bros, which I rebought last year or the year before. The Encyclopedia of Herbs, which I still use. I don't necessarily go with all of the associations that he's put in there, but it's just another resource to have. So yeah, I don't know if I would recommend them now. Maybe as an insight into what Wicca and paganism and witchcraft and magical practice was like for a lot of people, or how a lot of us came to it in the 90s and early noughties. But a lot of the books of the 90s and early noughties were filled with a lot of dubious, uncited claims, not very historically accurate. A lot more information has come to light since then. We have such better books now. We are so lucky that we have such better books, so many of them, and so much more accessible. Not all of the books are still created equal to this day, obviously, but the quality has definitely gone up. The information is definitely better. Are there still like fluff bump books out there being put out even by big name spiritual and magical publishers? Yes. I won't name the books, but I'm sure you can usually recognize them when you see them. They're often the kind of books that people buy when they first start off in witchcraft or Wicca or magical practice, and I'm always like, no baby, let me just, and it's because they look pretty and they're all very aesthetic, but like there's better books out there. They are there. So yeah, I wouldn't necessarily recommend them unless you were just interested in sort of is like in a historical sense, maybe. Okay, number 6. How has your practice and or paradigm changed over the years, if at all? Okay, so now we're touching on what I was sort of mentioning a little bit earlier. I started off with, Wicca and witchcraft are interchangeable, and Wicca is a religion, and you have the god and the goddess, or the lord and the lady, and it's all very binary, and it's all very spiritual, and it's all very set within this framework. And you have the 8 sabbats, and you have the wheel, the wheel of the year, as which we now know was made up in the 20th century. It wasn't a long-standing thing that's been around forever and ever and ever. And there's problems with some of the things that were chosen, like the example of, for example, Mabon doesn't make sense. If you want some information on that, Mara Starling, Welsh witch, has good Twitter and information about that kind of thing. Mabon specifically, I mean, and it's used as a sabbat. Was Mara Starling? I think it was Mara Starling. She gives good Twitter. Go check her out. What else? So that's how I started, and it was all very. I believed in the Lord and the Lady and the God and the Goddess and the pantheons, and it was very pantheistic. Not pantheistic, can I speak? Polytheism. But it's because I keep thinking of the pantheon as in the pantheon of gods and the pantheon in Greece. Not polytheism as in the many gods theism. I definitely need this tea to get the brain cells going. Brain fog. So yeah, that's where I started. Then I and I stayed within that for quite a while, and then once I got into my early 20s, I sort of moved away from that as I started just living my life and having a career and, you know, relationships and going out and partying and doing all the things that you do in your 20s. And as I got into my later 20s, that's when I started to become unbelieving, and I went through sort of agnostic and then into like atheism, hardcore, hardline atheism, arsehole atheism as I like to call it, my arsehole atheism stage. And then it started to flip again, and as I started to bring more stuff back into my practice, and again I'm going to be talking about how that happened, I was practicing magic and reading tarot, but I was doing it from a very psychological model. It was all very headspace based, and by headspace I don't mean using your mind for like visualization and psychic development, but headspace is in locked into your headspace, into your actual brain box, very within the body. There's no outer anything. And then, like I just said earlier, that has then started to shift because I started to be drawn to pantheism, actual pantheism, the meaning of pantheism. And then I started to be looking at animism. And actually, a thing that also helped with that was working through Marie Kondo's life-changing magic of tidying up, which I did do a bit of and work through a bit of. And that coincided a little bit also with my depth year in 2019. That had an effect because she asks you to thank the items that you're getting rid of for their service before you pass them on, whether that's to throw them because they've had it, or to donate them, or to gift them, or to sell them on eBay. She wants you to thank them. And I saw a lot of people saying, oh, this is really stupid. And I think what a lot of people didn't realize is that Marie Kondo has a history rooted in Shintoism. I think she used to work at a Shinto temple, and obviously Shintoism is an animist religion from what I understand. I don't know a huge amount about it, but I do, from what I've heard, read, seen about, which could be wrong, is that it's quite an animistic belief system, which makes sense where Marie Kondo is coming from when she's asking you to thank your items or to wake them up. She takes things out of boxes or off of shelves and she shakes them or taps on them to wake them up. And I just think that's actually really beautiful. And when I started to think about that, I was like, even if that isn't necessarily truly what's going on with a book or an item of clothing or anything that you have around your house that you love and use or that you want to get rid of, isn't that still just a really beautiful way to consciously interact with the things that you own and use, and to respect them and to take care of them? I just thought it was really beautiful, and that sent me down the road of like, oh, hang on. And I was looking, I was still on and off studying herbalism, and going on walks at my local park and foraging and wildcrafting herbal remedies and herbal teas, and talking to the plants and asking for permission whenever I foraged, making sure that I foraged consciously, that there was enough for other people and there was enough for the wildlife left behind, that kind of thing. It really made me, in connecting with the land. And I think part of that was also reading Chris Orapello and Tara Love Maguire's Besom, Stang and Sword, which I read around the same time as Aidan Wachters' work, which had an effect on me as well. Wow, that was another wordy, mouthy one. I'm going to try and get this done in under 30 minutes, or in around 30 minutes. I'm at 23 minutes, so I might be able to do it. Number 7, what does your daily regular practice look like? Daily/regular practice look like? And what do you do on a regular basis? Again, this is interesting, and I keep thinking about ruminating on a video that I would like to do, living and having a spiritual and or magical and or tarot practice as someone that has a squirrel brain. And I call it squirrel brain because I have suspicions that I'm neurodivergent, but trying to get that sorted out is a bit of an ordeal. So I just call it squirrel brain for now. And I live with chronic illnesses. I have chronic pain and I have energy limiting chronic illnesses. So I can't have those things together. Just mean a consistent routine is not doable because it's just not the way that my body and my brain just cannot function that way, and it's not realistic. And so I just allow myself to sit in that. I used to really beat myself up about that, but now that I understand more about my brain and my body, I don't beat myself up about that anymore. So I keep thinking I'd like to do a video about how to manage those things, and or squirrel brain or other neurodivergence, and or chronic illnesses that sort of interfere with your daily energy levels or your pain levels, your movement, your mobility, and how to deal with that and how to sort of still build a practice. So if there's something people are interested in, let me know, because it's certainly something I'm interested in seeing other people, other spoonies out there that might be able to shed light on how they do it. So I don't have a very set daily practice, that I go through phases. So I will go through phases where I'll do tarot every day, and then I'll go through phases where I'll just do a weekly reading, and then I'll go through phases where I'll do maybe just a monthly reading with occasional daily check-ins. The thing that I try to do the most consistently is my offerings that I do at my altar, and I'm doing that because that's where my altar is, over there, and that is offerings to spirit allies. So that is to just any spirit allies that are hanging around. That might be ancestors, it might be just random spirits that are interested in contacting me. And also spirits of the land that I live on, in, around this general sort of genus loci, and then also offerings to the spirit of this actual home, this particular sphere that I live within, this building. And I still sit in this space of, I don't know if I necessarily believe that is a real thing, but I'm doing this. I'm just acting as if it is and just seeing where it takes me. And I have had some really interesting experiences, and when I ask them that I'm open to messages from them, I always clarify that I'm happy to receive messages as Claire, what's it, like Claire knowing? What's the Claire knowing? Claire, not Claire sentient. There's the one that's the Claire little knowing. It's in Psychic Witch, where Matt Oren breaks them all down really handily. But you know, when you just let you know, or clairaudience, I'm happy to hear clairaudience, and I'm happy to receive messages in my dreams, but I always specify I do not, and visions, I'm always happy to have visions in my mind's eye, but I always specify, like, do not be touching me, do not be showing up in like my actual physical visual sphere, because that might freak me out still. So but yeah, that's what I do. So that's the one thing I try to keep consistent, and even that's not always consistent because, again, energy levels and things, and I have like a little set routine that I do with that, a set way that I do it, and then the other things that I'm quite sporadic with will be, but I still try to incorporate into my practice, are, tarot, journaling, which was a bit of a problem when I had a pretty gnarly thumb injury, which is still not healed, but it's better than it was because I really like journaling. And then, yeah, meditation, breath work, someone with anxiety, meditation and breath work. And then the problem with the squirrel brain is trying to get yourself on the chair, on the cushion, on the bed to do that work. And again, it goes through phases where I'll like be smashing it every single day, and then other times where it's, again, much more sporadic, but I allow myself to do that. Ooh, we're almost at 28 minutes. I'm not going to make it in 30 minutes, but I'll try to speed up. 8. Are there aspects of your craft that you need to keep secret? In your opinion, is secrecy important in witchcraft? Yes and yes to both of those. This is part of the reason why I felt like stuck in this little mini space of wanting to share certain witchcraft and magical practices, but also wanting to keep things private, because I always think of Gandalf telling Frodo when he gives him the ring of power, keep it secret, keep it safe. Because if you keep it secret, you keep it safe, right? So, and that's always what I hear in my head. I actually hear and see Ian McKellen leaning down at me as Gandalf saying that, like, keep it secret, keep it safe. So yeah, I think if you're doing any kind of working, especially if it's a sort of a longer term working, you want to keep that private. You don't want to be like sharing what information about your protections and your wardings. You don't want to be sharing information about your, I don't know, are you doing hexing? Are you, or baneful craft? You know, you don't want to leave yourself open to people knowing more about your craft than necessary. I think where I've landed is it's okay to share techniques, you know, how to make a spell bag, how to create a poppet, how to do candle magic, that kind of thing. But when you're actually doing specific workings or things that you do regularly, zip it. I do. I genuinely feel like part of the power is in the secrets and the knowing, and part of it is also not being open to other people having access to that information about you. It's a bit like cyber security, right? It's magical security. So number 9. What are some of your favourite tools that you use regularly? This is interesting because I used to have and love and want all the bells and whistles. So I had the traditional Wiccan setup, because that's what I learned with, right? So I had the illuminating candles, and then I had a gold and silver candle to represent the god and the goddess, and I had the pentacle and the goblet and the offering dish for libations, and my own little dish for my cakes or ale or whatever I was going to be grounding with, and I had my athame and my, you know, the whole lot, the whole shebang, the cauldron, everything, the incense burner, the bell, everything. And I loved all the bells and whistles, but it began to be quite stressful, and visually I found it quite cluttered. And this is just for me. Everyone has a different view on altars, and it's very, very personal, and obviously it can change with time and with seasons and with your like life circumstances or your living arrangements and things like that. I was very lucky in the sense that my mum, well, it was always like, yeah, whatever, do what you want. So when I started sort of building an altar in my bedroom at the age of 16, she was like, what's that? And I'm like, oh, it's like a witchy altar, and this is the book. And she's like, oh, okay, whatever, just don't burn the house down with the candles. That was literally it. And she really didn't care. She just would, I think she either wasn't that bothered because she just wasn't that bothered, or she just didn't believe it was anything. She didn't believe that I could do anything magical anyway. She doesn't believe in it, so it doesn't matter. Do you see what I mean? A bit like how Shane, out of Shane and Ryan from the what do you call it, the Ghoul Boys, the Ghost Files, previously BuzzFeed Unsolved Supernatural, where Shane will just, people are like, how does Shane Madej just be so disrespectful to spirits? And it's like, he doesn't believe that there's anything there. You can't be disrespectful to something that you don't believe exists. If I said I think that there's a pink elephant, a pink magical elephant made out of, I don't know, bubbles round the corner, and that's my true belief, you have to respect it. There's probably not a pink magical elephant made out of bubbles around the corner. It's, you know what I mean. Anyway, that was a really rubbish example. Oh dear. So yeah, I don't, but now everything is so stripped back. That is to say, I don't really have many tools. My athame has been put away. I do have my pentacle that my cauldron sits on, just as a level of like extra heat protection on my altar. So the thing that probably gets used the most is my Tibetan singing bowl, which I use at the beginning of any daily practice for offerings, meditations, at the beginning of any ritual or spell work, and I also use it to close. So that gets me in a certain headspace when I hear it. So when I'm opening or clearing space and starting something, I use it traditionally as you would get the bowl singing. That's what I do. Imagine my Tibetan singing bowl here. And then when I'm closing, I've got it on my altar, and I just tap it 3 times rhythmically, and to me that indicates that it's closed. Whatever I'm doing is done. It's the end of it for that day, or for that, that period of working. So that gets used a lot. I've had that for a few years. The thing that's probably been used the most that I still use to this day is my cauldron. I say cauldron, it's a brass pot that I bought at Camden Market, in the second-hand sort of odds and sods market next to the canal. I've had it for about 25, 26 years. I've always wanted like a proper cast iron one, like a slightly bigger than the one that I have. But I've always just used that one. I don't put anything wet, I don't put any liquids in it. I've mostly used it for dry things and for burning things. It mostly gets used for burning stuff, petitions, sigils, herbs, anything like that. Really, really cool. I've also stuck candles into the bottom of it before, and it's been with me through thick and thin. I saved up for it. It cost me £15, I think I remember, which was a lot of money to little 16-year-old me back in 96, 97. So yeah, that's probably the thing that I've used the most. I'm just looking over at they're probably the 2 like magic-y things that are on my altar that I use the most. And then the other thing is divination tools, predominantly tarot, and then also to a lesser extent Lenormand. I love me some tarot, and I use it sometimes a lot, sometimes a little bit, sometimes not at all. Again, it's all just go with it. It doesn't make you any less of a witch or a practitioner. You just go with the flow. So if you are neurodivergent or you have chronic illness, and I keep going on about this, don't beat yourself up. Or if you just have a really busy, your life's got really busy, don't feel guilty. Just do what you can when you can. When you feel like it, don't, as soon as you're forcing yourself to do something and it becomes like a chore, it's not going to come from a place of, I don't know. Although sometimes that can work with meditation and breath work. Sometimes I'm like, oh, I don't really want to get on the cushion, but I'll get my ass on the cushion and I will do the breath work and I will do the meditation, and then I felt 12 million times better. So I don't know. Use your discernment in that. Oh, and my phone has gone on lock because I hadn't used it for a while. Okay, and finally, number 10. So this has gone, we're on 35 minutes now, a bit longer than I wanted, but I did have a bit of a ramble. But if you've been here before, you know that's how I roll. But number 10 is, what books or resources would you recommend to newbie witches interested in your kind of craft? There are so many books. Okay, so this is where I'm going to start talking about where everything's shifting and evolving for me, because I've been working with within a certain framework since the end of 2018, beginning of 2019, so nearly 4 years, on and off, because I had 2020 was a bit of a year, and I sort of stepped back quite a lot from a lot of the things that I was doing, and I did sort of start to pick it up back on and off last year, and then it's been more consistent on it again this year, but still very on and off because I've had a lot of stuff going on personally. And it's been really hard to try and be consistent with things and dig into things the way that I want. But I want to bring more folkish stuff into my practice. So Mnomquah actually recommended someone that I've had on my list for ages, which is Roger J. Horn. I know that Nigel Pennick has a couple of really good books. So I've also been very, very slowly, I've actually stalled on this, but I was working through Making Magic by Brianna Saucy, and then also using the Moon book by Sarah Faith Gottesdiener as well, because I'm trying to add in some more folkish stuff. Actually Aidan Wachter recommends Brianna Saucy's work in the back of his books, so, and their friends, I've heard them talking on podcasts, so there's more of a paradigm here. There are other books like Jason Miller, Matt Oren, Durgidus Alan Duriel's The Little Work, but they all have a certain amount of framework that they hang off, because they might use the Lesser Banishing Ritual of the Pentagram, or other things that are built in within like a chakra system or other kind of systems. They have a not necessarily a dogma, but they have a certain framework with a certain cultural framework. But the ones that, if you want to practice like me currently, even though I'm bringing in and learning more folkish stuff, I would say Six Ways by my boy Aidan Wachter. I know I am an Aidan Wachter fangirl. This book has it's you can even see it's a little it's well loved. And then this year I got Changeling, a book of qualities, which I did read, and I'm slowly going back through again, and I'm highlighting and writing notes. And then what I'm doing is I've got a file here, and I'm very slowly, because I had read it and I wanted to write my reading notes about it, because my thumb was janky, like I still couldn't hold the pen properly to write, and it really hurt to write. And rather than writing, if my hand is, I want to use what movement I have in my hand to sew, so that I can sell things, so that I can eat and buy more books. So yeah, so I now that my hand's a bit better, I can sort of again slowly start to do what I did with this, and just start to extract and add this stuff into my practice. So yeah, Six Ways by Aidan Wachter, all the notes. Changeling, a book of quality. So this was his first book. This was his third book. The middle book, Weaving Fate, I haven't read, because it's based around 3 very specific practices that I didn't feel quite ready for, or that I was interested in getting into just yet. I will be picking up that book next year, purely because I'm a completionist, and I know I will get to it at some point, but I'm more interested in adding in more, getting back into working with the moon like I did when I was younger, but having a different view about it. A different sort of take on it rather. Yeah, so, and then also I always mention art witchery, using art and crafts, but there's no real book. The only book I can think of, which I've not done any of the projects from yet, but I will do. Hang on, where is it? It's probably Molly Roberts' Art Witch, which has got some fun art projects if you're interested in getting art magic. But my art magic is just very much like I make my own poppets, I make my own spell bags, I stitch my intention into a lot of things. But that isn't necessarily a specific structure, so, and neither of these are quite loosey-goosey. They sort of take what works, discard the rest, have a little play. I mean, you could literally work for a decade with this and still never be done. And this has had a good 3, because 2020 was the year that will not be named again. Well, I just named it, but mostly 2019, and then on and off, you know, mostly last year and this year. So it's had a good run. And now we're starting to incorporate this. I think these two are really good introductions to just magic full stop, without having any particular paradigm, any kind of particular cultural or religious framework. It's very bare bones, and then from there, what you like from here you can then extrapolate and buy other books. So what I like from here is sort of some of the very folkish stuff, which is where I've gone into looking at folk magic, which works, right? Because I do a lot of sort of kitchen witchery, and I practice herbalism and use herbs and teas, and so that's quite folkish. So I've always been drawn to that, but there seems to be a plethora of really good books out there at the moment that wasn't available when I was younger. Anyway, I have talked my bloody face off, talked your ears off. Oh, it went all a bit funny then. The autofocus is a bit dodgy on my camera, and now I'm quite warm. I've sort of gesticulated myself and heated myself up a bit, and the sun's trying to come out. That's also probably why. Anyway, so I'm going to leave it at that. I want to thank Mnomquah for this awesome tag. I think it was really, really good, really insightful seeing hers. I'm hoping other people will do it. I want to go and seek out other responses to it. Yeah, so do the thing. I will link to her original video in the description box, and yeah, get involved. And thank you for watching. If you've made it this far, I will see you in the next one. You take care of yourselves. I really appreciate you being here. Ciao.